I want to welcome Jim Hollistein. I don't want to keep that much Jim because he's in Pennsylvania. It's 3 hours from San Diego. So, Jim,
Somebody's got a bedtime.
Jim, it's always a pleasure having in our class. I know that our students are going to learn from your cultural experience living in Tijuana. So I want to welcome again.
Pues tal vez, vamos a ver, ¿no? Cool, cool, cool. Well, Victor, and thank you as always. Always love this class. You know, it's funny that the question came up of moving to the other class. I had attended San Diego State as for the first year of a 3-year grad program for social work. So I don't know if there's any social workers that are here in the house. I've been part of the class, but or excuse me, part of that program. But my experience of living in Tijuana kind of ruined it for me because I was so enthralled with just volunteering as someone who lived in the city with the immigrants and different organizations and people that I just realized, wow, there's no school in the United States that can offer me what I'm experiencing right now other than this class. I approached Victor and I said, look, I'm on your waiting list to get into the class. I really want to get into it. Is there anything I could do to expedite this? I was never able to get into the class, but I later had contacted Victor and I said, hey, I live in Tijuana. I'm having experience X, Y, and Z, and I love it, and I would love to present to your class and share a bit of that. So I think, Victor, we've been doing this class together for the last 3 years, and I always appreciate hearing just what appears to be the benefit of folks hearing from just me as like a white guy gringo who is from Pennsylvania, you know, really only learned Spanish in his 30s and then went to go and live in Mexico. So that's what I'm going to present about. Are there any questions before I cruise into all of this?
How is it living in Tijuana?
It was awesome. It was awesome. I was one of thousands of Americans who lived in Tijuana. I was actually featured on. Have you ever heard of Soledad O'Brien? The Matter of Fact with Soledad O'Brien. They did a short that was titled "Undocumented Americans Living in Tijuana," and there's many of us who would live there because the rent and cost of living happens to be much less than San Diego. It can be a quarter of the price in rent, half the price when you go out to restaurants and um, entertainment and such. And so there's a lot of folks who we live in areas in general where they're places that never make the international nightly news. The international nightly news that we hear of Tijuana, the death rate and things like that, the drug cartel, those are all real things, but it's almost like there's two Tijuanas. There's this real, true Mexican Tijuana that has a lot of struggles due to a unique challenge that nowhere in the United States deals with because of our war on drugs, yet appetite for illegal drugs. There's a lot more I can say on all of that, but that's one Tijuana. The other Tijuana is this Tijuana where Americans come with American dollars, earning American wages, and they can afford these beautiful communities and go out to nice restaurants. There are more there are more 4-star restaurants in Tijuana than in either Los Angeles or San Diego. I believe San Diego or LA has 2, but Tijuana has like 5 of them. The cuisine is world class. Tijuana is the craft beer capital of Mexico. Valle de Guadalupe is an hour and a half south of there, and that's the largest wine growing region in all of Mexico. So there's a lot of reasons that made me feel very safe, and I really enjoyed it. And so my presentation, I'm going to show you guys just quite a bit of that, but it was a great experience, Toby. Awesome question.
What's like a regular day for you in Tijuana?
Spending a little time cruising the border so I can go to work. Um, when I first moved to Tijuana, I crossed by foot, um, and all I had was a ready lane pass. So my wait was maybe 2 hours on average in line. And then I got a Sentry card, and that made the walkover a lot easier. There's very little wait, if anything. And then I saved up enough money living in Tijuana that I bought a motorcycle, which is something I was just at the time not able to really do in San Diego. And that allowed me to be able to leave my front doorstep in in Tijuana and arrive to work in downtown San Diego within 30 minutes. So my average day might include that, but otherwise, I lived in a community called La Libertad. I'll show you a couple photos. I would just spend time kicking it with people I would meet in Tijuana, primarily Mexicans. I had an opportunity where I lived in this communal living space, and I had anywhere fluctuated between 5 and 7 roommates, all Mexican. I was the only gringo American white guy there, and I learned a lot of Spanish. There's great coffee shops out of Tijuana, and then I had at one point something where I was inviting Americans who either lived in Tijuana or would cross the border to get to know a bit more of Tijuana. I would do some tours with them, but primarily focusing on learning the language and the culture. So I would host Spanish classes and things like that. It was a really cool time. 4 years in Tijuana I had before coming back here to Philly. So at this point, I guess I'll hop into the presentation here. But any other questions here before I get into it all?
Yeah, I got a quick question.
Sure.
So I saw a video of one of your presentations that Professor Alfaro posted, and
Cool.
I remember you mentioning the group that you would ride bikes from downtown San Diego to. Are you still doing that?
Yeah, Paseo de Todos. No, I'm not. And it's something I know Victor just happened to have mentioned it a moment before. I'm 3 hours ahead of you guys right now. I live in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I grew up in Scranton, Pennsylvania, which is just 2 hours north. So, if you've ever seen The Office TV show, I'm Jim from Scranton. But I lived in San Diego for 10 years, and then 4 years in Tijuana, and then my now ex and I, we came back. Her and I, we came back to Scranton, where I'm from, and then ultimately I moved to Philly in that separation, but have been back here since. But there was 4 years being in Tijuana.
There's a little. Turn on the light.
I'm sorry, what's that? Barrett, sorry. I don't know if that answers part of your question there.
No, it's fine. Yeah, I was just because I know you seemed real interested in it, and it seemed like a good time when you were doing it. So I didn't know if it was still something you took a part in.
Yeah, 100% love my time. In fact, I think if you still saw my Facebook page, my main tagline says "Go live in Tijuana." Like anyone who, because I would be hit up on email by people like, "Hey, is it cool for me to?" I would say 100%. If you're a respectful American, yeah, you can absolutely love it. And there's so many places in Tijuana where you can be where you actually don't need to really know Spanish. But I do encourage anyone who goes, like, learn the language, learn the culture. That's what makes the experience here the best. So I guess I'll get into that. But any one last question here before I hop into it?
I have a question.
Sure. I'll take one more and then save it for the end, and we'll answer any other questions here at the end. But I'll do one more question here real quick.
What do you like the most and the least about Tijuana?
Oh man, I don't think there's anything I like the least about Tijuana. I don't think so, because if anything, it would have been waiting in line across the border, but with the motorcycle, it makes it really easy. So I was very, very fortunate to do that. The most, I know the single coolest moment I had in Tijuana, which I won't even show this in the presentation. This isn't something that I can just encourage anyone to go and see and experience in Tijuana, but it was visiting the monument of Luis Donaldo Colosio. He was the John F. Kennedy of Mexico, basically. He was assassinated there in 1994 at Lomas Taurinas. And it was a true honor to go there and see that. And having learned that man's story, there's an awesome Netflix series about him called Colosio, Colossio. Yeah, his story is unreal. So certainly seeing that, but like on the regular in Tijuana, man, I met the warmest people. Like San Diego has so many cool things to do, but I do not meet as many as warm people in general in San Diego as I do meet the warm people in Tijuana. And that's just something that's characteristic of Mexico in general. I lived in in Guadalajara for 6 months and visited around the republic, the country, and met the warmest people. So certainly that was the best. And however that translated into the awesome coffee shops or cool craft beer places like Revolucion and Sexta, I really liked. Plaza Fiesta is cool. Secut is my single favorite place. I guess at that point I'll get into the presentation because I'm going to show you guys some of that. So we'll officially begin here. Let me go ahead here and share my screen. All right, cool. So Tijuana. Who knows where that photo is in Tijuana?
It's Place de Tijuana, right?
Es cierto. Claro que sí. Yep. It's Playas de Tijuana. In the very back there, those bars that you see, that's the border wall. The United States is right there on the other side. And man, Tijuana is such a great place. Playas is really cool. Where those folks are standing, they're right next to the fourth largest bull ring in the world. Holds like 25,000 people. I have an aerial view of that here. I'll show you all in a moment. But in general, people were asking me like, yo, how's the experience of living in Tijuana? They were Mexican. I would be like, es bien curada is what I would say here. There we go. Because that's what it is. Curada. Who knows what curada means?
Like cool, like awesome,
cool, awesome.
Like cool, but like with the 2 exclamation marks, like that's the top you can say when you're like Mexican.
Es como like, bien chingón.
Cool. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So, ¿eres tijuanense?
Sí, yo soy de Tijuana. Nací en Tijuana y viví en Rosarito hasta los 10 años y después me vine para San Diego, entonces
okay.
Sí, soy de Tijuana.
Okay. Transfronteriza.
Sí.
Cool. Nice. So yeah, curada means cool. It's like bitchin'. It's the coolest time. I know that's a word that people throughout Mexico would say differently. Like chido is what I remember us saying in Guadalajara. And then even like Mexicali says chilo, I think. But it's just one of those words that when I lived in Zona Rio with the other Mexican roommates, I would hear them all say different things all the time. There would even be moments I'd be sitting in my kitchen and I'm like intently trying to understand what they're all saying. And then I'd hear them say one to one another, like, hey, what does that mean? Like, what did you just say? And I'd be really excited because I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not the only person in here learning Spanish at this time. But my first real introduction into the Latin world, it came from my undergrad experience. So being here from Pennsylvania, I attended Westchester University, which is 45 minutes west of Philadelphia. If you've seen the movies Jackass or Viva La Bam on MTV back in the day, that was like Westchester University. So that's where I went to school. I studied communications and I had to take a language. So I chose Spanish because there were Latino workers on campus. I just thought it'd be more of a useful thing. But ultimately, it wasn't until I had paid a visit to visit my sister who was spending a year studying in Ecuador. She was a foreign exchange student, and a couple friends and we went there for a 2-week period, and it was incredible. And then after college, I knew I wanted to live in Southern California. I saw on a map that San Diego was 2 hours south of LA. I thought that could be cool. And then I saw it was just 20 minutes north of Mexico, and I thought that sounds really awesome. So I decided to move to San Diego in 2006. My real intro to Tijuana was within a month of living in San Diego. I was part of this church group that would go down to TJ and build homes on the outskirts. So Mexico Caravan Ministries. And that was really cool because I was living in Pacific Beach. I'd be picked up and we would drive 45 minutes away and we would basically end up here. And it was just such a unique, cool, weird, awesome experience. And then that group was also connected with this orphanage building project for Niños de la Promesa. And they were right in downtown TJ. They were right by the archway. The municipal government in TJ, they currently have that as one of their local operations. They had moved to Playas de Tijuana, and I don't know if they're still currently in operations, but that was just a really cool, unique experience. I can remember the very first time I ever experienced as this gringo from Pennsylvania, my very first ever Christmas Eve in Mexico. It was in Tijuana. And I can remember friends and I, we were spending the weekend down there. We were building and we decided to just crash for the night. And then all of a sudden at midnight, I hear fireworks going off in the street. I just hear all this commotion and I didn't know. No one told me. And I actually got kind of like nervous. I ran to the window. I was like, oh my gosh, like people are celebrating Christmas here. That is just the coolest thing. And now, Barrett, I know that you asked me earlier about Paseo de Todos. This is that crew. Paseo de Todos, if you're a cyclist in San Diego has a really easy, commutable bike scene there. I know that there's critical mass, but within Tijuana, the driving can be so insane. It's really life or death being a solo cyclist in the city of Tijuana. I would do it still every now and then, but my preference was riding with a big group, and that was certainly the case with the majority of the people there. So I had a really awesome, thriving communal bike scene where, to the point of pretty much every single night of the week, you can meet in Plaza Rio and cruise around with others from Tijuana and see the city. It was a really great way to see the city. And again, met like really great, awesome, warm, friendly people. It was really, really awesome. From time to time, I did this, the touristy stuff. Professor Clark, just moments ago, he mentioned the Zonkies, the basketball team. That's what Zonkies are named after. That's the Zonky right there. My understanding, the reason that the stripes were painted on those are just donkeys. But that around before the turn of the century, when Tijuana was first being visited heavily by American tourists. So this was post 1885 when the Transcontinental Railroad landed in San Diego for the first time from New York. And businessmen came down here and they started opening up bars and casinos and horse racing and things that you couldn't have on the U.S. side of the border. At that time, American tourists would come down and they would just meet locals in downtown Tijuana and they'd want to get a photo. And in those black and white photos, those white donkeys would not easily show up in the photo. So some of the owners would paint black stripes down them to make them look like zebras, and they better would show up in the photos. That was the best explanation behind the Zonkies, why I heard. I don't know if Victor would tell you anything different, but that's actually not a photo of me. I just found that on Google. But Tijuana is a very cool, interesting place for tourism. Did this maybe once or twice, but it wasn't really my main thing ultimately. I really wanted to like dive into the language and the culture. So my first real immersion experience was I had this opportunity to volunteer at a camp in Guadalajara. So Guadalajara is the second largest city in Mexico. It's north of Mexico City. It's kind of in the middle of geographically the country itself. And when I arrived there, I thought, this is going to be cake, because I had 2 years of studying Spanish in college. I was visiting Tijuana every now and then. I thought it would be totally cool, totally easy. I was totally wrong. I bawled the first night I was there because I didn't understand anything anyone was saying. It was really rough for a little bit. Like in Spanish classes, we'd listen to the audio, "Donde está el baño?" and it just never worked that way. But over the number of months I was there for about 6 months. I learned quite a bit of the language. At least by the time my last month there, I felt comfortable standing up in the cafeteria and giving like a daily announcement. But it was like very, very short. It was hard. Like, I think I was 32 when I was living there. So, I guess everyone has their own opinion, but like, learning a second language as we get older, it doesn't get easier. But the warm people that I met made it really easy. The history, the culture, all of that made it really easy. And by the time I was able to get to speaking and having a basic conversation, it felt incredible. It felt like this. And so by the time I moved back to San Diego, I knew I wanted to live somewhere where I can continue learning Spanish. But I lived in North Park for 6 years and I loved North Park. So I didn't want to go too far from North Park. So does anyone want to guess just where in San Diego I decided to move back to? Again, close enough to North Park, but I can still practice a lot of Spanish.
City Heights, maybe? I don't know.
Yeah, you know what? You're the very first person to actually guess it the very first time. Yep. Oftentimes I hear like Chula Vista, San Isidro, which would all be good places too, but ultimately, City Heights. I loved City Heights was cool. City Heights, obviously, like I moved to Tijuana, and that was incredible. That's what I really, really wanted. But City Heights was still really cool. I had a lot of opportunities to get involved. City Heights Community Development Corporation, the YMCA was right there, so my gym was right there, and there were a lot of whether it was either like a food truck or there weren't many bars in City Heights, but there was like there was like one where I can go to and practice my Spanish at, which was really cool. But in general, I actually met a lot of Chicanos who did not want to practice their Spanish with me. They were often like, "Hey, I'm American, like I speak English too," but their parents never had a problem with it, and they'd probably cook me tacos, so I always practiced my Spanish with them. But during that time, on all my days off from work, I would hop on the trolley downtown and I would take a ride to TJ and I would ride my bike around TJ. I'd explore. I'd go to Sinopolis and spend like $250 on a movie or something and go to a cool restaurant or coffee shop or craft beer spot. Tijuana was just so great. And during that time, I was able to come across this book called Tijuana 22,000. And this book, you can still find it online, I think. But this is a phenomenal book because it is bilingually written by two native speakers, both an English speaker and a Spanish speaker. So it's a pure translation, and it's all about Tijuana, written from basically like a hipster's perspective. So it showcases all the cool kind of things that just I really liked. And then during this time, I also met a bunch of Americans who were living there, and they told me how much they were paying in rent. And I said, "Yo, I'm in, totally moving to Mexico, and I'm gonna do it." And so I moved to La Libertad. And for anyone who knows Tijuana, you know La Libertad. For me, coming from living from Guadalajara, I did want something that was going to feel pseudo authentic, and not just like see Americans everywhere. So La Libertad was really great. I loved living in La Libertad. It's right at the border. It's by Zona Rio. And right here, this is Zona Rio. This is, anyone know what that building is right there on the left? The big, that big cement ball right there?
Secut.
Secut, that's it. Secut is probably my single favorite place. And it's very convenient to visit from the border. This is really only like a 5-minute Uber or taxi ride from the border. You could walk to it. Bring a friend. I wouldn't say make that your very first thing that you do when you cross into Tijuana, but get to know where Secut is, visit that. Sundays, I think, are free. That big ball is a huge IMAX theater. I think it was built in 1982. And it's Centro Cultural de Tijuana, so it's the Tijuana Cultural Center. And phenomenal permanent museum exhibits, as well as rotating contemporary art. Just really, really cool stuff there in Secut. And this is actually the 4th largest financial district in all of Mexico. There's a lot of money that comes out of Tijuana and a lot of money that comes out of Zona Rio right there. And it was really cool to just be a 5-minute bike ride, 10-minute bike ride from there. So right here, the top right, that was my first apartment in La Libertad. I think it cost I don't even think it was $300 a month. Give or take, it was around there. And it was great. To the left there, anyone know what spot that is in downtown TJ? The upper left? That, my friends, is Pasaje Rodriguez. It's on, I think, 4th Street in Revolucion. But it's a really awesome artist conclave. A couple cool coffee shops in there. There's a bike shop. There's like apparel shops, like hippie kind of hipster sort of stuff. Really, really cool place there in TJ. The bottom left-hand corner, that's me at El Ejército de Salvación, so the Salvation Army in La Libertad. I met many immigrants there who were either working across the border or who were deported and were in transition. And man, the stories that I heard out there was unreal. Actually, the very last time I cried was in Tijuana, and it was in front of 2 women I did not know. I was volunteering as a legal translator for asylum requests, and it was preliminary processing of asylum requests. And my job was to listen to this woman from El Salvador tell me her story as to how she came here. to the border. And my job was to then tell the female lawyer from Texas what she was saying. And I started crying. I couldn't believe it. The story of immigrants. It's such a crazy thing. I'd love to see it ultimately changed. And I have a lot of thoughts and opinions on that, which is certainly a different webcast. That's for another place, another time here. But the bottom right, con la cerveza no hay tristeza. Kind of a cool saying, which means anyone know con la cerveza no hay tristeza, what that means?
I'll take a stab at it. Is it like with beer, there's no bad days or something like
that? Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. It would be like with beer, there's no sadness. Yeah, it was just a cool craft beer bar in Plaza Fiesta. There's a number of really cool craft beer spots. Basically, the history goes that San Diego was the craft beer capital of the United States for many years. And because of that proxemic influence, Tijuana became that for Mexico. So to this day, Tijuana can be associated with a lot of like crazy party atmosphere, but there's a lot of really awesome, very chill, cool craft beer bars that serve artisan food as well and are just really phenomenal. Here on the left is Sept. That's their permanent exhibit where they discuss the history of the Californias. So like even our current state of California, because up until 1848, that was property of Mexico before we took that in the Mexican-American War. But then below that, you have Baja California Norte and then Baja California Sur, so North and South Baja. And it's a permanent exhibit. And what's really cool is that it's bilingually presented. So whatever you read in Spanish, you can then read it in English and vice versa. And I learned a lot of Spanish by doing that kind of stuff there. The upper right is probably my single favorite tacos in Tijuana. It's Tacos Frank. It's right at the border, right by the Costco, and just really awesome, incredible tacos. The bottom right, that is Mercado Hidalgo. And right there I have a cup of yucca fruit, which is jackfruit, which is, I think, perhaps my favorite fruit on planet Earth. A lot of it grows in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. And Mercado Hidalgo, it's right in Zona Rio. It is probably the quintessential market of Tijuana. Really great selection of pretty much everything. And really awesome spot at Mercado Hidalgo. And then upper left-hand corner, that is Valle de Guadalupe. I was briefly just a tour guide for some friends. They wanted to see some cool wineries and stuff in Valle de Guadalupe. And then the upper right-hand corner, I'm teaching my roommates how to slackline. They'd never seen a slackline, and nor have I also seen another slackline in Tijuana. So that was just really fun every now and then doing those sessions with my roommates. The bottom left-hand corner, I was able to do a 3-day hike from the Pacific Ocean to the Gulf of California, the Sea of Cortez. And it's an annual hike called the Baja 100. And I was maybe one of 100 different people that went to go do that. And it's a really cool event because it's completely supported. They carry all your camping gear. You arrive to your site. It's all set up, and you just get to kick it in the middle of the Baja Desert with people. And it was really fun. The bottom right-hand corner is Cerro Colorado. So that's basically like the Cowles Mountain of Tijuana. Cool spot. Not quite as transited as Cowles Mountain is in San Diego, but comparable as far as difficulty in hike. The left-hand side here, this is Feria Tijuana. So this is like the San Diego County Fair, but in Tijuana. Really cool time that evening. The upper right-hand corner, that is Mexican Independence Day that we're celebrating. Who wants to tell me when Mexican Independence Day is?
The 16th. Well, the 15th, and then it goes over to the 16th.
You are Tijuanense. Yes. In Mexico City, it's the 16th because so here's the thing with Independence Day in Mexico. It's kind of like New Year's Eve is in the United States because in New Year's Eve, the United States, we celebrate it at midnight. In Mexico City, it's celebrated at midnight, but what Mexico does is through its 3 or 4 different time zones, it's staggered out. So it's at midnight in Mexico City on September 16th. So that means it's at 10 p.m. on September 15th in Tijuana. And that's when they do El Grito and all of that. So really cool celebration in Tijuana. If you like your fireworks, it's insane for September 15th. And then the bottom right-hand corner is my favorite pizza place in Tijuana. That is Tony's Pizza. It's run by an American man from Manhattan. He moved to Tijuana. I think his wife was from here. They moved. He started this pizzeria like 20 years ago. It's the best pizza in Tijuana. It's kind of like Sicilian thing pizza. If you've ever had Sicilian thing in North Park, it's much like that. Upper left-hand corner, a bunch of my roommates all hanging out or having like a roommate meeting. The upper right-hand corner right there, we're doing a trash cleanup in Tijuana. Trash is, in my opinion, certainly a challenge in Tijuana, especially compared to our own typical American perception of it. The municipal infrastructure is much different, and for a lot of reasons and challenges, it's quite a thing in Tijuana. The bottom left-hand corner is a group called Creative Mornings. And Creative Mornings it's an international organization, and San Diego has had one of the biggest ones globally over the years. And so it's just this monthly meeting of creatives. Anyone who identifies as a creative get to go, and just a really great way to meet people, and especially cool creatives. They're some of the best. And there were actually a number of times before I moved to Tijuana, I would leave San Diego early in the morning to arrive at a Creative Mornings event. They were typically on like a Saturday morning. Just a really, really cool way to get to meet people there in Tijuana. Bottom right-hand corner, there's a cat cafe just off of Revolucion. So if you like your gatos, you can go and see them there, the cat cafe on Revolucion. Upper left-hand corner is the Binational Social Work Conference that was at Sept. That was with San Diego State, the social work program, and also La Escuela de Trabajo Social, so the Tijuana social work school. The upper right-hand corner, I biked to Tecate. I did that once. Never thought about doing it a second time. Although it was beautiful, there were times along the highway it was just, it was a little dicey. I remember pulling up to the toll booth guy, like the quota guy, was just kind of like, well, what are you doing biking along this to Tecate? But at least on the American side, it's really beautiful out to Tecate. Tecate is a pueblo mágico, which is a magic town, and there's a number of them all around Mexico. And Tecate, for its history, its mineral springs, its hiking and outdoorsy things to do. Tecate is a really cool place. It's famous for its pan dulce, so it's sweet bread. It's a cool place to visit, Tecate. The bottom left-hand corner, this gentleman that's here in the very left, his name is Enrique Chu. And Enrique was working to build what has become the Guinness World Record for the longest border mural. So he would every weekend go out with dozens or maybe even hundreds of volunteers, and we would just paint the whole border wall. So that was a really, really, really cool, unique, awesome experience, was doing that. I helped Enrique various times and always had a really cool, fun time doing that. On the left, los garrafones, estamos llenándolos. We're filling up our water jugs right there because you don't want to drink the tap water in Tijuana. Pretty much anywhere in Mexico, you just don't want to drink the tap water. Just different filtration standards. The upper left-hand corner, just playing some games there with my roommates. It's a wooden top game. I think it's called Piñolo. I can be completely butchering the name of that, but just my roommates teaching me a game there. On the upper right-hand corner, there's a spot in downtown Tijuana called Enclave Caracol, and it is run by some vegan hippies who they do food servings to the homeless, to immigrants twice a week. And it's beautiful. It's just awesome vegan food. So we're just there chopping up some veggies, and so some really cool people to meet. I understand that they're still doing it, and their story is interesting. The guy who started it, his name is Chris, an American gringo from, I think, Minnesota. And he ended up in Tijuana, started this, and has been there for the last couple of years. The bottom left-hand corner, a Cholos game, and really awesome. The Cholos Stadium is actually quite state-of-the-art for stadiums in Mexico. They were the first to have like the special high-caliber AstroTurf that they play with. It's not called AstroTurf, but it's something different that a number of stadiums here in the United States have. And Beers are like $1.50. Great time for soccer. Bottom right-hand corner, Tacos Barrios. There are taco carts all around Zona Rio. Many of them say Tacos Barrios. Those are the best. As someone who eats primarily vegan, vegetarian, 95% of the time, Tacos Barrios has everything. So it literally means various tacos. If you see one of those booths, go to it. They have the best stuff that you can have in a taco. Upper left-hand corner, that is Alma Verde. It's a restaurant in Lacacho. They also have a location in Hipódromo. They have another location, I think, in Zona Rio. They have various locations, but one of the best places for breakfast in Mexico. So had some American friends come to visit. They wanted to get some bikes and do a little adventure that day. That was a really fun time. Bottom left-hand corner, more tacos. Just a lot of tacos in Tijuana. I mean, world-class cuisine for various reasons. Bottom right-hand corner, just some more roommate photos there. In the upper right-hand corner, there's a school called La Salle, which is actually, I believe it's a Catholic, it's definitely a Catholic-run school that's international. And they offered free classes for anyone. I mean, including myself as a non-Mexican. I was able to just show up and take some free classes. And this was a vegetarian cooking class that I took. I was one of 2 guys in that class with at least a dozen older women in the class. It was a very cool, unique experience for maybe an 8-week time period. It was great. And one of the best things of being in Tijuana is that we are so close to San Diego. Crossing the border, like I mentioned earlier, you have your various options. I loved the motorcycle thing because it made it just so easy. I can get to this location here in North Park within 30 minutes of leaving my front doorstep. So certainly the best of both worlds, not at all a bad situation. And as far as being in Tijuana, I know a question that comes up is just in general, like, why would I encourage someone to be there? I mean, I feel like it should be obvious at this point. The tacos, well, more than that, the people. I mean, just the people that you can meet on the daily when you invest in immersing yourself in that language and that culture. Just really some of the best people. And there are many people who believe in that spirit of binational unity. So right here you have this group that meets annually, and it's a beach cleanup group. And so what you see right there is written in the formation of people. So there's definitely probably a couple thousand people, if not a few, who are part of that binational beach cleanup. And then right here, you can see in this photo, who can guess the left side of this photo? Is that Mexico or is that the United States?
I would guess the U.S. because didn't you say that? I forgot what it was called already, but that big stadium you mentioned, it was on the Mexican side.
Yes. That big stadium. Unfortunately, they'll be demolishing it. I don't know if they've already begun that process, but that had been the 4th largest bull ring in the world. They still presently would have concerts and stuff there, but it was built in the 60s. Yeah, it's a really phenomenal thing to see. Yeah, there's actually a cool skateboard video from 1998 called The End, where Tony Hawk is skateboarding inside the middle of it. He actually does the first ever skateboard loop. He does it inside that bull ring there in Tijuana. So there you go. Cool, another fun factoid. Tony Hawk did the first ever loop there inside the Tijuana bull ring. But, many people who believed in that sense of binational unity is always very refreshing. But in many ways, it makes perfect sense because you are so close to Mexico from San Diego. I mean, right here we can see there's downtown San Diego. There's the Coronado Bridge. You then have the Strand, and then IB, and then right there where all that construction and everything really begins again, that's all Tijuana. It's all right there. It really is just so close. So it's beautiful to gain a confidence in knowing that place because there's just so much greatness to experience there in that city. And then, to be able to now tune in and, see national nightly news highlights, it's great to know a bit more about that by having had that binational experience. And then also, in the business world, there's a lot of people who want those candidates who, it's obvious they understand and care about diversity, cultural understanding, even being bilingual. Obviously, that can be very helpful. in a number of situations. And one of the major questions ultimately is also, well, how could one warm up to Tijuana? Tijuana Walking Tour is a great tour. You can find that online. They've got a tour that for $20, they'll meet you at the border. You take public transportation together over to downtown, and you do a walking tour around Revolucion, and you learn about the history. You learn about what's contemporarily going on there. You go to a brewery at the end. It's a really cool spot that you get to see there on Tijuana Walking Tour. But I think the very best thing is Turista Libre. Turista Libre, to me, hands down, really has all the awesomeness that can be experienced in Tijuana and Baja covered. Derek Chin runs it. He's one of the contributors for that book I mentioned earlier, Tijuana 22,000. He's been running Turista Libre for, I believe, 12 years by this point. He's originally from Ohio, so he's right next to where I'm at here in Pennsylvania, where I'm from. And he moved there years ago. He professionally had been a journalist for the San Diego Union Tribune, and he just wanted to introduce people to this experience of Baja, of being there. And so he will take folks and cart them from the border in his cool fun bus, which is just a converted municipal public bus. And yeah, really, really cool time. You'll get to go see Lucha Libre matches or go to a Zonkies game or Los Toros, get to see them. This water park they'll go to. I had done one of their annual trips to Mexicali where we celebrated Chinese New Year and learned all about the history of Mexicali, how it has more Chinese than anywhere in all of Mexico. You get to see some really, really cool, incredible things with Turista Libre. So, and you can also check out online. By the time that I'd been in Tijuana and before ultimately moving back to Pennsylvania, these were a couple groups that were very active on Meetup. I'm sure you can check out on meetup.com, search Baja, search Tijuana. You'll find other groups that are likely visiting Tijuana. They'll coordinate together from the U.S. side and go to a lot of different places. Ensenada to Rosarito, Valle de Guadalupe, even do Tijuana day trips where they'll go and do a restaurant tour or a craft beer thing or go visit the beach. So you can do that with other Americans who want to do that. I had been doing Immersion Living Tijuana. That's what I was doing with the Americans who were there doing the tours, doing the classes. Today, you can still find some cool videos online on YouTube. We also have podcasts that I know are on Spotify, I think Apple, pretty much all the basic platforms, called Immersion Living Tijuana. My friend Alex and I, we recorded at least 6 different episodes, and they were bilingual, talked about the city and the culture and stuff. So again, just anything to share with folks, the good stuff of Tijuana and of Baja and of Mexico. And of course, safety. That's obviously a big issue that comes up because of the unique challenges that Tijuana has because of our, in my understanding, the war on drugs policy. Tijuana faces challenges that no U.S. city experiences. So you have a heightened police presence in general. Because of a lot of issues, there is some corruption, but for my own experience with the Tijuana police, it was really rare where anything felt sketchy. In fact, my last time with the police was very respectful. I think it did help that I did speak Spanish, but they had checked me, but it was they saw everything was all cool. There was never any exchange of a bribe or anything weird. It was just like an interaction you would have with on average your police here on the US side. So you will see that because of those challenges. In general, I would just tell folks there's certain things to avoid. Things like this that you would see, especially if you're going to be disrespectful and you don't know the language and the culture, you can really easily make yourself a target in certain places. So there's certain things that I would discourage in a way. But thankfully, there's enough cool stuff to do in Tijuana where you can go and enjoy it and not compromise that sense of safety here. And I know Victor will ultimately be talking about these areas and the work that he and others are doing to help make Tijuana the best place that it can be. But again, recognizing the unique challenges that are in that border city because of, in a lot of ways, unique policy. you're just going to be dealing with the reality of certain things. But, you know, for me, it was all about hanging out with my roommates and others that I met, other locals. We're here just celebrating one of our roommates' birthdays outside of Mammoet. So if you've ever been to Mammoet, really incredible pizza, craft beer in right off of Revolucion on Calle Sexta. And then they have other locations that are around Tijuana, but really awesome place, Mammoet. And outside of Secut always had the coolest festivals. Right there to my right, that's my friend Dave. And David, he was actually a student at San Diego State in the social work program. And when he learned I lived in Tijuana, he wanted to know all about it. I ultimately got him his first place in Tijuana, and he spent a few years living there, and he loved it. So it was really cool to kind of pass that torch off to somebody who was able to enjoy loving and living in Tijuana like I had. So if you guys have any questions, this is my email. You know, you can feel free to hit me up, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you all have. Let me see here. I do want to show this, my own little self promotion here. What I'm working on right now is this book, and so I expect it to be out here within the next 2 months. Victor was asking me, so, you know, are you studying to become a professor so you can teach this kind of stuff? And I told him, no, I'm working on finishing this book, and ultimately working to teach mirror movement development to people internationally, really. But this is what I'm working on here right now. So ultimately, I'd say buy my book when it comes out within the next 2 months. Follow me on social media, learn ambidexterity, and all that. So Victor, as always, thank you very much for this opportunity. That does it for my presentation. So at this point, we can do a little Q&A here for anyone that has any questions. Just feel free to chime in.
¿Puedes regresar a la primera página otra vez?
Yes.
Y para ver a los estudiantes.
Ahí está.
No, a la primera, donde está todo el grupo.
Oh, sí. O sea que quito de compartirlo.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Cool. So yeah, please feel free to chime in on any questions you guys have.
So now we have the space for questions and answers.
I don't have a question, but I have a comment.
Mm-hmm.
And I find it like really like funny how like Tijuana has like this reputation that it's like, oh, like violence, drugs, like robberies and stuff like that. And like recently I had like a family trip to Tijuana, and my cousin is married to a white guy, and like he was so scared to go because he was like, no, like they're gonna rob me, like they're gonna try to like, you know, overcharge me and stuff. And it's just so funny how like seeing your perspective of like Tijuana, like how like it's not all of Tijuana that's bad. It's like there is like certain areas, but I feel like where my uncle lives personally, like that like little neighborhood is like so like family, like I guess you could say like a family area, because like there's like so many people who are just like, oh, like good morning, hey, like how are you? And it's just
totally
yeah, it's so funny.
It's
like
the best part of being in
everyone's
Mexico, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely. Because here, like I noticed that people don't really say like, oh, good morning and like hey or stuff like that. And over there, it's just like
we all got
right
earbuds
away.
in, and that's just it.
Yeah, exactly.
That's all you get.
Yeah, so I really like enjoyed like listening to how like you really enjoyed Tijuana, and just kind of like, you know, so yeah.
The best would be just like being at a restaurant and you're enjoying your food and someone walks by and they're like provecho, and you're like provecho.
Yeah.
So cool. I love it. I
know.
love that stuff. Yeah. There, you know, there were many times, especially in Guadalajara, I met a lot of people who were more vocal about sharing that dream of coming to the United States, because in Tijuana, like people are already there. But in Guadalajara, people would talk about like, yeah, I really want to like go to the United States, like enter in, and you know, they'd be like, I know people who live in Santa Ana. It'd be like every Mexican knows someone who lives in Santa Ana. And but I would tell them, I'd be like, you know what, you're welcome to come. You're welcome to try to do that legally, illegally, whatever is your choice here. But I see more smiles on more people's faces here than I do in my own country. Like, I just do. Now, again, you guys will be bringing that Mexican mentality. Many of the happiest Americans I've met have been Mexican Americans. But still, it's like, There's a reason that you might get called pocho, like going to the United to Mexico. Like there's something that someone could become quote unquote Americanized. Like but that sense, that warmness that I mentioned even since the start, that was always the best thing of being part of Mexico. And I'd love to see it obviously more in the United States. And thankfully I get moments where I see it, but it's really common beautifully in Mexico. Yeah.
Yeah, and like I had a trip to like where my parents are from, and like it's like so funny too how like everywhere you go, like they're like, oh, like good morning, and like all of this. And I like speak to my parents about it, and my parents are like, yeah, like we want to see more of that here, but instead like me and my family have gone through like discrimination stuff, and it's just like my mom's like I love living here, but it's just like I want to have like that warm like feeling from where I'm from, because like over there everyone is just like so opening and like just like wanting to be friends with you.
Yeah, I think frankly there's just less to compete for as far as like in that competitive kind of way that just kind of makes a lot of us as Americans. I guess I could say a lot more about all of that, but I just met a lot of Mexicans who were just very, very happy with what many of us would consider as less stuff. Not everyone has a tablet. It's like, that kind of, first world problem kind of stuff. And but that also doesn't mean that there's not senses of disparity either, because there are real challenges because of just globalization and United States as historically having so much of the power over that, really over any or all nations. Obviously, a lot of that is changing, but this does include Mexico. And one thing that I would certainly say, because often when the topic of Tijuana comes up, the topic of safety comes up, which then brings up the topic of police. Tijuana police on average are paid a quarter of what police in the United States and in San Diego make, primarily in San Diego. The challenges that Tijuana police have to put up with are very different than the challenges San Diego police had to put up with. San Diego police have their challenges, but the Tijuana stuff, like all those guys got to suit up with bulletproof vests every day to go out to make a quarter of what a San Diego cop would be making. So when they do encounter disrespectful Americans who don't know their language, don't know their culture, and within the police department, there's many of their own coworkers who subscribe to the company culture of taking bribes from people, like, geez, if it happens, it's not going to be the end of the world for that American, but it doesn't make it right. But it's one of those things that I do not see as don't label how in your mind awful this place can be in your experience because of this thing. There's a lot that's going on there that produces those occurrences. Thankfully, I've met many more Americans who have never had an experience like that. But, those of us who maybe do have that, of course, we're going to be very vocal about it and make it sound like it's the end of the world. But thankfully, it's not the average American experience there. So just a word on that. Any other questions? Happy Thursday to everyone, by the way, from Pennsylvania.
Did you visit Tequila when you were in Guadalajara?
Oh yeah. Yeah, Tequila, the town of Tequila is just 45 minutes north of Guadalajara. So my ex and I, when we had our wedding, it was in Guadalajara. So we went to the town of Tequila and bought, a whole bunch of stuff for the wedding. So, oh yeah, absolutely. I'm trying to remember, it wasn't Herradura. It's like there's a label that had a horse on it that was just really, really great. But yeah.
Oh, Herradura has the horseshoe in it.
Has the horseshoe, but there's one that has like a physical horse on it. And I'm trying to recall what that mark is, but that's a really great brand. But yeah, I mean, and even the town of Tequila itself, there's a lot of history that comes out of there. And because of that tourism, you're going to have that, there's mariachi bands everywhere, awesome food. And then again, being just 45 minutes away from Guadalajara, so you can enjoy Guadalajara and then take a 45-minute ride through the country and end up in the town of Tequila. So, but I actually really enjoy mezcal, that smoky flavor. And I don't know, I always associate it with just great experiences I've had in Tijuana. So that norteño smokiness of mezcal is just,
yeah.
Do you miss
living in Mexico?
I really like Philadelphia for the history. I'm a big history nerd. On the front cover of my book, if you notice that Ben Franklin is in the middle of it, and Ben Franklin has pretty much everything to do with Philadelphia. So I love Philly for that. Thankfully, Philly is the same size as San Diego, so culturally and stuff to do wise, it's pretty much the same. But we got snow and ice in the winter and rain often. So as one who still really enjoys the Southern California and Northern Baja lifestyle of I still skateboard every day and like to bike ride and be outside and stuff. Can make it certainly in the middle of winter. I miss pretty much anywhere, but especially San Diego and Tijuana. But I guess I have the beautiful problem of I'm happy where I'm at now, but then I also was just so happy to be in Tijuana and San Diego. Yeah, I love it. So at times I miss it, but thankfully there's enough here to do in Philly.
So first off, I want to say again, I appreciate you staying up this late because I know it's way late where you in Philly right now. But
it's easy when you're talking about something you really enjoy, So it's I told Victor I always appreciate it. So of course.
Okay, and yeah, I can't say I've ever personally been to Mexico, but I do agree with Samantha with I've never been to Mexico, so there are bad things that I hear about it, but it is like Samantha said, cool to hear the good things or the things you don't usually hear from someone who lived it firsthand, all the fun things to do and visit. So that was definitely an interesting new perspective to hear.
And one thing too, if you wanted to actually just hear in real time others like me who are saying the same thing, there's a group on Meetup. I think it's called Baja Talks. And you can just hear from other gringos who are like, hey, I'm going down this weekend, going to Ensenada. Where can I go? And you'll hear like 20 replies from all these other San Diego gringos who are like, go to this place, go to this place, go to this place. It's really great here. So yeah, I'm not like a unicorn by any means. I'm just the most vocal and maybe one of the more informed about it all.
Okay. And then also you made mention of the kind of the Chinese in Mexico and the areas they live in. I find that's also not something you really hear about from anyone just because I don't know. I haven't heard about it till today.
The 30,000 foot overview of that, when it came to building the railroads, the Chinese came over for that work, made it easy because it was right there at the border of the Pacific. They would arrive and up through, in fact, the 1940s, I think, is when they had the highest population of Chinese there. The population of Mexicans in Mexicali in the 1940s was 500 on average, but they had 10,000 Chinese living there. So much so that they had, on their main street, they had 2 movie houses that showed exclusively Chinese movies. It's unreal. That's why they say, like, well, you got to go to Mexicali and get the Chinese food. I actually just learned here in Philly, we have a restaurant called La Chinesca, which, Victor, yeah, I see you're shaking your head like, yeah. And as somebody told me that, and I was like, are they from Mexicali? And I looked them up online, and it was like Mexicali cuisine. I cannot wait to go check out this place here in Philly, La Chinesca. Yeah, it's really incredible, the history that comes down. So go to Teresa Libre, do that tour, and you get to see like the underground casinos and just how they dealt with their own form of martial law, which is a little, gives you the willies. But yeah, Mexico will surprise you at every turn, for sure.
Cool. Thank you.
Of course.
I have a question. As an American who spent so much time in Tijuana and then visited a city like Guadalajara, what nuances or what differences did you pick up on having so much experience in a Mexican border town versus visiting a city like Guadalajara that's more central and, obviously culturally different, but I'm wondering what differences did you pick up on?
Man, and that's a great question. I think it's important to recognize that while I was there for my 6 months, that was my first real immersion experience. So even like at the camp that I was a volunteer at, there was some guy who was there from Argentina. And I couldn't equally understand either the Argentinian nor the Mexicans. And so I didn't even recognize that there was a difference in accents, for example. And so when I started to understand them and they were saying, like, can you tell the difference with his accent? I was like, no. And they were all so surprised. And it's one of those things that just as one who's been learning the language as an adult, you come to recognize that over time, the way the mind works and language acquisition and the learning process, that was really unique. But I think that it made for a sense of not, it was like sensory overload culturally. But now looking back on it all, I think one of the main differences, like for example, Dia de los Muertos isn't celebrated anywhere in Tijuana really. Like there's not even a municipal, maybe like some, bars or restaurants or entertainment venues that cater to Americans heavily might advertise like a Dia de los Muertos thing. But because Tijuana is so far from Mexico City, the nation's capital, where just so much of the historic culture and everything comes out of, Tijuana was more influenced culturally by the United States. It wasn't until the 1960s, 60s or 50s, I think 60s, that pesos were even used. It was exclusively American dollars because that's where all the influence, that's where all the economy, that's where all the tourism, all of that stuff was coming from. So Tijuana is very American influenced in that way. But because it is at the border, you get so many people from Latin America who want to enter the United States or come to Tijuana for work because of that international exchange, that you do get a blending of the contemporary cultures from all over. So it's a really unique city. Plus Tijuana, I understand, doubles in population every decade. That's insane to me. Tijuana has been talked about internationally as one of the most unique cities. Actually, in the 1920s, it was the most visited city globally. But obviously, like we're talking now, like contemporarily, like, what's Tijuana really like? And because of those things, it makes it so unique. And Guadalajara is going to be different. Guadalajara has 500-year-old cathedrals. Yeah, just so much history that comes out of there. And it's beautiful. It's breathtaking. But culturally, I think culturally it's a bit more. My ex used to tell me that Guadalajara is definitely much more conservative. You see a lot more fair-skinned Mexicans as well, like of that more European colonial descent. So that makes it really different. Yeah, so those are at least some of those differences for sure that come to my mind between there. But everywhere can be different in a way, kind of like in the United States.
Awesome, thanks.
Of course.
I have a question.
Okay.
Is there a habit that you learned in TJ or Guadalajara that you've taken with you to Philly and that
Ooh,
they find that it's weird, but it's normalized to you now?
I'm really weird in general when it comes to this perception of this concept of weird in this case. I mean, I'm as ambidextrous. I do everything with both hands. I've been working to learn everything left-handed and mirrored for the last almost decade. So that alone makes perspective and such kind of weird with a lot of things, just physically, mentally. But culturally speaking, here's what comes to my mind. I get really nervous when my American friends here tell me, "Oh, like you lived in Mexico. Let me take you to like this cool like Mexican restaurant where they serve Latino food." I'll be really nervous. I'll get in there. I see like no other Mexicans. None of the wait staff speaks Spanish, and I'm having like night terror sweats just thinking about like, oh my gosh, is like the tortilla gonna be bought at like Ralph's? Is it gonna be that kind of a place? So that's kind of, I got very very spoiled by the cuisine firsthand from Mexico. But being here in Philly, the Latino population in Philly is just under 10%. The majority of that is Dominican Puerto Rican. So it's a completely different culture in so many ways. And the accent is very different. And there's a lot of different words. So, but I haven't come across an Americanized representation of those cultures that I've come to fallen in love with. So for that reason, I'm very interested in going to Miami because I understand Miami has a big Dominican, Puerto Rican, Cuban culture. So I want to understand more about that corner of the Latin world. but I haven't had that yet here in Philly in general. Thankfully, in South Philly, there is a Mexican population, and that's really cool. I've met some really cool people there. But they're always surprised because they see me. My day job, I'm a tour guide for Philadelphia sightseeing tours, so I'm on top of a double-decker bus every day going around all the historic sites of downtown Philly. We see the gravesite of Ben Franklin. We see the biggest masonry building in the world. We see it's where history came from. Independence Hall, that's on the back of the $100 bill, everything. So I do meet a lot of Latinos through that job who will come and do a tour. And I have one day where I'm dreaming that somehow fate will have its chance and everyone on my tour bus will be Latino and I can give my first tour in Spanish. Till that day, that hasn't happened yet. But I know, here in the United States, every major city is growing exponentially in the Latino population. So it's cool to be able to visit really anywhere and be able to use that. But as far as like what I would have really brought, I don't know if within that, any of that really answered your question, but that's certainly what comes to my mind. Other than a longing, I've certainly brought that for missing Tijuana, especially after classes like this and chatting more about it.
Awesome, thank you. Also, because I do live in TJ,
Nice.
and
What part?
really, Olímpicos. It's not nobody.
Olímpicos.
Yeah.
Where's that?
It's by playas.
Oh,
close by.
like
Yeah.
southeast. Like where is that? Olímpicos. It's not directly east of there. My ex and I, we once walked from La Libertad to Playas. We went through like canyons and all sorts of like shady neighborhoods. We only did it once. It was certainly an adventure, but I don't remember coming across. What's the neighborhood that's just directly east of Playas? That's like just up off the hill. Cumbres de Tijuana or Las Vistas or I'm just trying to position where Olympia would be at.
Olímpicos.
Olímpicos.
So yeah, it's called Pedregal de Santa Julia.
Okay, yeah, no, I don't.
Yeah, nobody really knows this place.
Okay.
So I would
Okay.
say that it's near Playas because it's the most common.
Okay.
But I really want to know the name or the address of the pizza place that you mentioned because I'm a pizza lover.
It's right on Calle. I think it's Calle Brazil. It's right by the coffee shop Das Cortez. It's right by the Das Cortez that's in La Cacho. It's on Calle Brazil. I think it's catty corner to another coffee shop that is also on the tip of my tongue. Cafe Baristi.
Oh, there's
a
lot of
It's right by there. Yeah, there's a bunch of Cafe Baristis. The Cafe Baristi that's right there in La Cacho, that's on Calle Brazil. Yeah, Tony's Pizza, which is right by Alma Verde. Yeah, you'll see the Alma Verde that's in La Cacho. It's right by there. Victor, I think you need to add a class where you all go to Tony's Pizza in La Cacho.
Yes.
I'm just saying.
Or tacos.
Or tacos. Well, Las Almaderas is right by there as well. I think Las Almaderas is only like 3 blocks from there.
Yeah, I've been there. They're good.
Yeah. I know that's been on the Food Network, Las Almaderas. That's like, it's basically this one street and there's, I think, 5 or 6 in a row taco places. So especially like after a Cholos game, it's packed there because it's right down the street from the Cholo Stadium. Yeah.
All right, thank you. I loved your presentation and I loved your cat. It was just chilling there.
That's Cazadora. Hold on. Espere. There's right here. This is Gitana.
Oh,
two.
Yeah, there's 2. Yeah, so there's Gitana right here, and then there's Cazadora. My wife and I, we actually adopted them when we were still in La Libertad, so they're my Mexican roommates.
Oh.
Yeah.
So you talk to them in Spanish or English?
Claro, yeah, no hablan inglés.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Of course, you're welcome.
4 cats, and what's with the X? I remember you talking like a honeymooner.
Yeah. It was just, over time.
Pandemic.
It happened. Yeah. I mean, it's ultimately for the better, but lessons learned.
Cats are cool.
Yeah, and hey, the cats are cool. The cats are chill. They're happy here. It's a little hot here in Philly right now. We deal with the humidity, so they don't really like that. But otherwise, they're chill.
Are they Mexican cats?
They are Mexican cats. Yeah, they're Tijuanenses. We adopted them in Tijuana when we were there. Yep.
And you got the cats.
Yeah. Well, I got two of our three cats. No, Yasmin, she got Principe, which was my favorite cat, but he was also her favorite cat, and he was a real ladies' man, so it's really difficult parting from Principe. But yeah, he was the one who adopted us. Yeah, I miss Principe, but yeah, so I got two of the three,
I'm
but
just
they're awesome.
like sometimes cats are easier to live with than two-legged.
Yeah, certainly more that could be said on that, but yeah, short answer, agreed.
I have two
Agreed.
cats.
Yeah, yeah, they're great. They're great. Love them so. Yeah, nice
Oh,
to see you again there. Well, cool. Well, like Victor mentioned, it's getting a little late. I'll happily answer another question here or two if there's any other questions. Otherwise, you guys can email me. Be happy to chat virtually.
I have a last question.
Sure.
You mentioned you went to Guadalajara, and
Mhm.
that Guadalajara is close to Mexico City. Do you have the chance to visit Mexico City?
I did. Para ver los chilangos. Oye, ¿por qué ellos se las llaman quesadillas, pero se las hacen sin queso?
That's a good question.
I know, isn't it? Yeah, quesadilla. You guys call them quesadillas, but they don't have any queso.
Without cheese.
I remember hearing an explanation. It had something to do with the name of, I don't remember. I remember hearing, I was like, okay, that makes sense. But then I just lost it because, again, I heard enough times. I was like, well, there's no queso. But I did go to Mexico City. Yeah, I went to Mexico City once, and that was cool. We had gone for a wedding, and we spent maybe like 3 days in La Zona Rosa or Los Doctores, which is like right next to La Rosa. And I can remember we walked to El Ángel de la Independencia. We saw El Torre Latinoamericana, and we just like rented bikes and cruised around the city. But it was really cool. One thing I will mention in this, since we do bring up Mexico City, one of my more culturally awoken moments, what felt like, was we were in downtown Mexico City. My ex and I, we were having dinner, and we're looking around. She asked me, she's like, "So, how many of these people here look quote unquote Mexican to you?" And I looked around, and I had a sense of what she was talking about, because everyone was fair skinned white, but everyone was Mexican. And she was saying, well, in the United States, a lot of the Mexicans that many Americans meet are those who have either crossed legally or illegally, but they come from more indigenous descent, where in many cities they're not favored for a lot of opportunities occupationally like the white fair-skinned folks are. And they call it classism, basically, where, if you're not of like the European descent, you might not be as likely hired for certain jobs if you are of the native indigenous descent. And so I remember being in that restaurant and kind of piecing that all together for the first time, and really thought, wow, I know of nothing else to say other than it sounds like that makes complete sense. So that was a really wild social awakening that I felt like I received because of being in Mexico City. But I really enjoyed it there in the city. I think it's a great city. Obviously, a lot of history. Do you know Mexico City?
Yeah, I do. And by the way, it's one of my favorite cities in Mexico.
Yeah.
I have family there, and I used to go almost every year. But I have most of my best times over there.
Yeah, pues hay mucho que hacer allá, ¿no?
Where is your email?
Oh, my email here. Let me I will click it back here real quick. Let me just go ahead here and share my screen. Because they're right down here. And there we go. Yeah, jimhuliston@gmail.com. I'll let you know when my book comes out too. You can all buy it. Be a short read. Very, very short read.
discount.
Student discount. Why not? I mean, you guys are all in this class, of course.
Well, Jim, I want to thank you very much for your always.
Of course, of course, of course. Take a
participating.
last-minute screenshot. I'll stop sharing my screen here.
Yes. Thank you. So,
Of course.
I want to thank you again for your generous participation in my classes. I'm sure I will invite you next semester.
Yeah, I'm in.
To see you again.
And
I hope you guys are all in person and I get to look at you all together in the same class. That'll be really rad.
and you're on Facebook too?
Uh-huh. Yep. On Facebook. I have an Instagram. My Instagram is Urban Railwalker. Search the hashtag #ThisIsMMD and you'll see all the stuff that I do as an ambidextrous artist, an athlete.
MMB?
MMD stands for Mirror Movement Development. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Hand rail walking, bipedal long distance longboarding, ambidextrous art,
Not
inversions, a lot of
MMA.
cool, fun, different things. So anyway.
No MMA, huh?
Too many fists to the face. I got a lot I want to protect in here, so yeah.
Okay. MMD.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. Mi placer, como siempre. Nos platicamos pronto.
Un abrazo. Te hablamos.
Okay, sí. A ustedes también. Okay, bye, Victor. Bye, todos. Later, everybody.
Thank you.
Of course.
Bye, kitties.
Thank you.
Later.
See that group next week.